Hey Gateway Church family, it's me again coming to you via video, and normally you would see me in this setting on Sunday mornings as I'm preaching to you from God's Word. But today I have a very important announcement that I want to share with all of you. And while I would love for us to be able to talk and to meet face to face right now, I am very thankful for the technology that we have that allows us to communicate and be connected and to continue to be engaged. I trust you and your family that you're doing well, and I pray that you are remaining faithful to grow in the Lord each and every day. Now, as many of you know, our governor announced last Friday the implementation of what he calls Phase 1 of the reopening of Virginia. Included in his plan was the ability for churches to begin to gather again for in-person worship services at a 50% capacity of auditorium seating starting this Sunday, May the 17th. Since that announcement, I know that you have been wondering and you've been asking others, hey, are we having church this Sunday? And that's a perfectly understandable question for you to ask. Coming to you today is me answering that question for you. Now, as a point of emphasis, when we do return to in-person worship gatherings on our Gateway campus, I want to tell you that we are not reopening the church. Almost as if a business has temporarily closed its doors for service, gone dormant, and then they're conducting some kind of a grand reopening event or sale. To be honest, our church has never closed. We continue to worship on Sundays. We do that together online, both adults and children. We continue to meet together as adults and teens in small groups for discipleship with our Wednesday virtual life groups. We continue to give in tithes and offerings and missions giving. We continue to minister to our neighbors, to our church family, and to our community by calling and checking on others' needs. So in reality, we have never closed and we are not reopening the church. As believers, I believe you've discovered that we are the church. And I thank you so much for your continuing efforts to be an example of what the church really is supposed to be. But nonetheless, I know that our in-person gatherings for worship are very important to all of us, along with it being a biblical principle that we are to follow. So in opening the campus for our worship services together again, I want to not only shepherd you in the spiritual, but I also want to shepherd you in the physical. I realize that some of you are taking the coronavirus pandemic very seriously, and you're exercising the recommended precautions. And yet some of you feel as if the precautions are over-exaggerated and you've gone back to your pre-COVID-19 daily living. In either case, one of my responsibilities as your pastor is to provide all that will attend a Gateway worship service a safe environment in which you can feel safe and also enjoy a beneficial worship experience. Likewise, if you think about this, the scriptures tell us to esteem others better than ourselves, Philippians 2 chapter 3, and to make sure the exercise of our rights and liberties do not become a stumbling block to those that are weaker, 1 Corinthians 8:9. And so to that end, I, along with church leadership and church staff, feel that it's best to proceed with caution with us gathering again for in-person worship services. You know, living here in the Virginia Beach area, we're all accustomed to taking on-ramps to travel the interstate system. We're also accustomed to maneuvering our ways through numerous work zones. And so our approach is going to be like taking that on-ramp to increase speed, to eventually drive on the interstate system. Or it's going to be like moving through, in a cautious, safe way, the work zones to not only get us to where we're going, but to also provide the safety for those that are working on the roadways. And so we plan to take a cautious, methodical, phased approach to moving forward and getting back up to speed. So as we're accustomed to hearing the word phases, we're going to roll out our plan of action in phases as well, and we begin with phase 1. And so to illustrate, this is you on that on-ramp. This is you kind of maintaining your speed to get you to where you are going. And really, you're just kind of moving along at the same pace. That's what we're going to do. We're continuing our online adult and kids worship services at the same times each Sunday morning. The online worship services will be conducted by me as your pastor. Our musicians, our volunteers, they're going to continue to record in an at-home setting, and we've been doing that for the last 8 weeks together. Our life groups will continue to meet online on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. So that's phase one. When we finish with phase one, we'll move into phase two. Now again, we're illustrating with the on-ramp example. This is you now starting to pick up just a little bit of speed. You're starting to notice the oncoming traffic and where you need to perhaps slide into the flow of traffic, and then things change just a little bit. This is phase two for us. We see our online worship services continuing. But me as pastor, the musicians, the volunteers, we're going to switch now from our homes and we're going to move into the church, either somewhere in a church capacity, the church auditorium, the student center, whatever that might be, and you'll start to see us come together in a kind of a small group on campus. Our life groups, they're going to continue to meet online on Wednesdays. Now, when we move from phase one into phase two, into phase three now, phase three is that part where you're gaining speed in your car. You've got your blinker on, you're noticing the oncoming traffic, you're almost up to speed to where the flow of traffic is. You're starting to change lanes from the on-ramp lane into the actual lane onto the interstate, and that's really phase three for us. And phase three produces the biggest change as we begin gathering now on campus for Sunday worship services. Now, assuming that we still have limited attendance restrictions, and those are still in place, we're going to conduct 2 Sunday morning worship services. Now, the times for those are to be determined, but we're going to conduct those with social distancing measures in place. You say, what is that? Well, families will be asked to sit together as family units in the auditorium. We're not going to have any kids worship. There'll be no kids classes, no nurseries. The coffee shop area is not going to be available for people to gather in. Our online worship presence will still continue, and our life groups will continue to meet online on Wednesdays. And just so you'll know, meeting back together for worship comes with mandated changes, such as moving from your vehicle in the parking lot straight into the auditorium, no gathering in the foyer area, you coming into the auditorium setting 6 feet apart from others in attendance, you using a potential reservation system to check in to the services so that we can maintain the appropriate attendance figures that have been given to us. In addition, for sanitation purposes, all the door handles, the bathrooms, any surface area, the pews, there's going to be an aerosol cleaning for the auditorium and the foyer. All of that has to be completed in between those Sunday services. Also, the use of masks for all attendees, they may be required as well. So it's much more than just opening the doors, turning on the lights, and going back to church as usual. So that's phase three. That's the biggest change. And then ultimately phase four comes along. And so now we've gotten up to speed with the flow of traffic. We've kind of merged into that first lane. And as you feel comfortable now in the flow of traffic, you're starting to change lanes and move over to where you really want to be on the interstate system. You're getting back into just the normal flow of traffic. Phase four brings us back to pre-COVID-19 operations with the 1 or the 2 worship services on Sunday morning. No limited attendance. It's an unlimited attendance. No social distancing restrictions. We come back with our kids worship, our kids classes, our nurseries. The coffee shop area opens up for us to be able to connect and gather in. Our Sunday services, or our services, will continue to be offered online each and every Sunday morning. Life groups now are going to be permitted to meet again in person on Wednesdays. And, it's just kind of back to normal. We're flowing now. We're moving along. We're back up to speed. And those are the 4 phases that we would go through. Now, as you noticed, there's no dates attached to these phases. And the reason for doing so is that as soon as we set in motion a dated plan, there could be a health, there could be a government, there could be some kind of a community change that comes along that would force us to recalculate our plans and to have to publish a brand new set of dates that, to be honest, could possibly change in the future as well. So I believe it's the most sensible approach to proceed with phases without specific dates. So communication, I promise you, will be given to you well in advance when we move from one phase into the other phase, intending for us to be able to get to phase 4 as soon as we can, but obviously as safely as possible. This plan of action, I believe, allows us to control the measures and the speed that we will need it to use in order to do what is best for us, again, both spiritually and physically. Now, while I cannot tell you how quickly that we're going to move through these phases, I can tell you that this is going to be our plan. So this Sunday and continuing forward, you will notice other churches perhaps utilizing a different plan of action, and maybe they're starting to meet in person, and that's completely okay. I want to encourage you, please do not judge other pastors or churches or other Christians for deciding to meet together more quickly than we do. And I would ask you to not judge us as well for taking maybe a slower approach than you would like to see. But I can assure you that every pastor has researched and prayed and consulted and agonized over what is best for their congregation. And I want to tell you, I've done that as well. And I feel the phased approach is best for Gateway. Now, do I wish that we could gather together this Sunday? Of course I do, just like you do. But exercising this cautious, methodical, phased approach, I believe is best for you, it's best for our church, and it's best for our overall ministry. Soon, we'll be back to normal, as we call it, and we've all said that. But I really do believe that we will not be normal when we return back together. I believe that God is working in us individually and collectively for us to be stronger and more focused on what's important than when we entered the coronavirus pandemic. I'm also excited to see how you've grown and what your desires to live for the Lord and to serve the Lord more effectively are going to be. Now, as always, if you have any questions at all about what I've presented to you today, please feel free to contact me or anyone on church staff, any of our deacons, any of our advisory board members. May God bless you today. May God use you today in a great and a mighty way.